Irashaimase! Hello and welcome to Fataris' Kitchen. I'm your host, Chef Fataris. It's time once again for Shoot 'em Up Saturday, and on the menu this week we have Raiden Nova. What kind of taste will it have? Let's get cooking and find out. From developer Moss, Raiden Nova released at the end of October 2024 for the PC via Steam, the PlayStation 4 and 5, and the Nintendo Switch, which is the version we're looking at today. This title is Moss's take on twin-stick roguelites. Think Geometry Wars mixed with Vampire Survivors using the Raiden fighters, and you basically have the right idea. The initial trailers didn't wow me on this one, so going in with low expectations, the game really blew me away. I've had a lot of fun with it. It's not perfect by any stretch, it does have some issues with being overly grindy, and the price point might be a little bit too high just to name a couple, but especially if you're a fan of the Raiden series, it's worth checking out. So let's dive in and check out these flavors. Here we find ourselves at the main menu. Before we dive into the play, this is a roguelite, so let's take a quick look at some of the options we have as far as purchasing upgrades and other, well in this case, fighters. So under shop, this is where we'll purchase additional fighters that we've unlocked. Initially you start off with just the Azuma, but then you can get the Spirit of Dragon, the Moulin Rouge, and then from there you'll start to get other fighters as well. They do cost a decent bit of coin though, so do keep that in mind. Now we have the power up. This is your upgrade section, but unlike a lot of roguelites, you're not upgrading your account globally. Instead, we're actually upgrading each fighter individually. So here's the Azuma, the starting fighters. You can see I put a couple points into upgrading the ship, but the one I put the most money into upgrading is the Spirit of Dragon. You can see there's actually quite a bit that's been maxed out on this one. And then the Moulin Rouge, which I've also upgraded, has absolutely, well, almost nothing purchased for it. So that will be pretty dependent on what you want to play. In addition to that, there's also achievements that are very important for the gameplay. Under the achievements, you can see what you're going to unlock if you've achieved certain achievements. So this is where you're going to get additional power-ups, additional options, or like sub-weapons basically, and also unlocking the ability to purchase additional fighters. So it's really important to know what you're aiming for, and this is where you'll find those. So for example, if I'm able to defeat 50,000 enemies across any game mode on normal difficulty or higher, I'll unlock the new fighter, the Crimson Fury. So I'm looking forward to that, but at this point I'm still not quite there. Under the play screen, we have two options for game modes. There's the arcade mode, which is 6 stages. You play for 5 minutes and then fight a boss. Then we have the unlimited mode. You play as long as you can survive, or as long as you can, take it basically, in any of the stages that you've completed. So initially you'll start with arcade mode, then once you select your mode, you select your fighter. So the Azuma is our default fighter here. But then we have the one I've put all the upgrades into, Spirit of Dragon, so that's the one I'll be using. You can switch between the colors. What this does is it changes your initial main weapon. We do have the 3 main weapons that are available in the Raiden series, the Vulcan, the Plasma, and the Laser. So for the Spirit of Dragon in red, its default weapon is the Plasma, which I do quite like. So on the Switch, there is a little bit of loading time between the stages, but it's not overall too bad. We do have a little bit of a launch sequence, and then it just plops us right in the middle of this city. As far as controls are concerned, this is very standard twin stick. Our left stick is movement, our right stick is the direction we're aiming, and also once you press the right stick, you'll start firing. The Plasma, if you're not familiar with the Raiden series, is known for being a homing weapon. So it'll home in on enemies, and sometimes you get really funky bending going on where it will potentially lock onto a further enemy, but if you bend it through other enemies, you can deal damage and potentially destroy those enemies. So now let's talk about what makes this title a roguelite. So like Vampire Survivor, as you defeat enemies, you gain experience. However, they don't drop crystals or anything like that that you have to pick up. You just earn that experience straight away. You can see our progress towards levels on the top bar above the time, and that time is ticking down to the time we encounter the boss on this particular stage. So as we level up, we have the ability to upgrade ourselves further. So, but one thing that's nice about Raiden Nova is that it doesn't take you into the upgrade screen right away. Instead, you can choose at what point you want to enter that. So let's go ahead and enter in now, where we have 6 levels we could potentially spend. So here is the upgrade screen. There's a couple things to take into account. You'll have 3 options available, sometimes 4 if you get lucky. On the left, you'll see how it will affect your overall stats. In the middle, that's where our upgrades are, and if you've purchased rerolls for the individual fighter you're using, those will be available on the right. So here you can see the weapon, the description of what it is, and then if it's a passive, an option, or if it's your main weapon. So we have our main weapon, but we also have room for 6 options, basically 6 sub-weapons. And then there's also room for 6 passives. And all those can potentially also evolve, and that will be dependent on if you have the other requisite upgrades for that particular evolution. So basically, homing plasma, for example, let's go ahead and take that one this time. If we get that one to level 9, if we have the weapon that's shown there for evolution, which is just the main plasma weapon, then it can evolve to level 10. Basically, it's ultimate form. So we'll take the homing plasma. Now we have 5 other upgrades we can pick. So I'll just go real quick. Pick life regen. We'll pick additional defense. We'll upgrade our main shot. We'll grab the sub-Vulcan and armor. And that's the way that the upgrades will go. So we can keep on saving those up and pop in every once in a while, and especially if you can have several upgrades built up at once, you actually do feel quite a bit stronger when you come out. So now let's talk about some of the other elements that are going on. So in the top right under our level, you see a mission that's eliminate 300 enemies. So you have these missions that the game gives you, and once you complete those missions, it drops these chests, which are hard to see depending on the stage. This one is one of those stages that they're hard to see, but these are the chests directly in front of me. If you select one of these chests, it's very Vampire Survivor-like, where you can get anywhere from 1 item up to 5 items. So those items will potentially be coins for the shop, in this case called medals, I guess, bombs, health, or upgrades for the various weapons or passives that we currently have. So here we got 3, which is great. There's also another one that we've already earned, so we'll pick this one up as well, and we also got 3 items off of this one. So bombs. Bombs are very effective at taking out the base enemies, clearing the screen of bullets, which is very important as things can get pretty chaotic with bullets and enemies later on in the game itself. And we can actually stockpile quite a lot of them. Initially, we'll be able to stockpile 10 bombs, and through various upgrades that you can earn in achievements, which I have not yet, you can actually equip even more bombs, so up to 12, at least with what I have seen available in the achievements. So things to aim for, definitely. But once again, you can kind of see how the game can get pretty grindy as we're looking to get more coins, defeat enemies, all of these to unlock further things in the game's achievements. Alright, and that's basically the main systems that are at play here in Raiden Nova. So it is possible for us to swap out our main weapon. If the laser or the Vulcan showed up, we could potentially go for a different weapon. So some of the things that we will encounter throughout the stages are like these huge enemies here. And one thing that's kind of interesting is sometimes the enemies, they'll approach us and then they'll run away after they've taken some damage. They can deal out a lot of damage, so you do have to be careful, especially if you don't have an upgraded ship to any capacity. However, that is a mission, so if we can take this enemy ship down, we'll gain quite a bit of experience and have another one of those chests as well. I'm going to pop into the experience. Let's see if we can get something that'll help us with this. Homing missiles are definitely good at taking care of enemies. They do deal a lot of damage and home in well on the enemies. Let's continue to upgrade our main weapon. We'll grab option laser. Couch plasma is good, homing missiles, and bam. So now we've got 5 options out of our total 6, and we're dealing significantly more damage to the enemies around us. But depending on what you take, a lot of the options will target independently, so you might not be targeting, like, say, the enemy that we want to. I unfortunately haven't seen the weapon come up that I prefer to take, so let's see if we can use some bombs to soften up this huge enemy. Bam! With that enemy complete, we get another mission complete and another chest. Not just did we complete the huge enemy, we also defeated 600 enemies, so we actually get 2 chests. So here we got metal, an upgrade to catch plasma, and some more HP. This chest gives us, come on, 5! No, that one we only got a single item. So after 35 seconds, we'll have survived the stage and we'll find the boss. Before we do that, so there are these blinking, basically power-up carriers from the Raiden series, and when you defeat those, they'll have one of 2 power-ups most of the time. They'll have either a bomb or they'll have an HP upgrade for you, or not HP upgrade, an HP item which will restore your health. It is possible to get some HP regen both by default as well as get a passive that increases that regen, so I would recommend that, but depending on the build you're going for, that might not be something that's that important to you. So now we've survived for the 5 minutes of the stage, we get our introduction for our boss. So I do like these introductions, as it gives you an idea of what kind of boss we're facing. This one is just kind of like a giant weapons platform, so we have to destroy the wing on the right side first. Then we'll swap around to destroying the wing on the left, and then we'll take on the main body. Before we get to that point though, let's use these upgrades we have to finish upgrading for the 5 upgrades we can potentially use. So additional HP regen, let's increase our plasma power, homing missiles, laser, and Vulcan. Alright. With our upgrades all used, and we'll now take out the other side of the plane. We'll use a bomb just to hasten things a bit. And now we enter the final form of the fight. So the bosses do come across as very bullet hell, as we have patterns that are reminiscent of other types of, well, bullet hell titles. Although one thing is that with the Raiden series, especially depending on your main weapon, you can use your weapons to clear enemy bullets, especially the smaller ones, so that's something to keep in mind. One thing I do wish the game had was a decent representation of how much life was remaining for a boss. As they do take more damage, they'll start to flash red, but it's kind of hard to just figure out what that means. And there is an achievement for defeating a boss in under 30 seconds, so I'm not 100% sure which build is going to be the best for that, but what I have going right now definitely is not that. So we've dropped a giant carrier on a city, it blows up, and that's stage. We have a nice little outro, and you get your bonus screen. So that's one stage of Raiden Nova. It's a lot of fun just getting to upgrade your ship as you please and kind of picking all these different upgrades. So now with that out of the way, let's dive ahead to a different type of stage and have a look at the way that the game can potentially be. So now we're starting up stage 5, but this time not in arcade mode, but rather unlimited mode. So there's no boss at the end of this, it just allows you to play the stage as long as you can survive. However, each of the stages has a difficulty rating to them, and stage 5 and 6 in particular have significantly higher difficulties. But at least you can see some of the way the gameplay evolves as you play through it. So we still have a mission of defeating 100 enemies, and they do start off fairly pedestrian with what they're throwing at us. So let's get some upgrades real quick so we can actually have a chance. Additional firepower, sure, homing plasma is always good. Now I'm using the wide Vulcan instead of the plasma shot, still using the Spirit of Dragon. So that's why you can see that my fighter, I started with the blue one rather than the red, so we did have a different starting weapon. One thing that you can look forward to is if you're able to max out your main weapon in particular, things can get pretty awesome. So here's some footage of what a maxed out plasma looks like. We're basically a spinning octopus of blue lasers of just raining death on the enemies. It's actually really awesome to get to that point. The Vulcan as well, you just are firing this cone of damage in front of you, so something to aim for sure. That first chest for hitting 100 enemies isn't great really, because we didn't need the HP recovery, but that's alright. So just upgrading things a bit more. Sub-Vulcan. We can change to the laser from here, but we'll keep on going with the wide Vulcan. The spark gun is actually a lot of fun, so we'll take that one. Gatlin, and more assault frame. Now you can just go and see that there's just a lot of options for the weapons themselves. I do feel that there's a decent number of options for both power-ups as well as the options themselves. I kind of wish that it was possible to equip multiple of the same option though, as you can only really have one laser or one, like, say, like nuclear missile, that sort of thing. And it would have been great to be able to pick up multiple. So now let's talk a little bit about the pluses and minuses of the game itself. So as far as the minus flavors are concerned, one of the things that after playing the game for several hours, that I'm initially starting to go and feel is that I wish there was a little bit more variety in specifically the fighters. So I've only have 3 fighters unlocked, but the game itself is indicating that there's only the 3 primary weapons. It would be great if there were more weapons to vary between for your fighters, and not just that, but maybe a greater difference between the fighters themselves, as you do have some differences. You can see from, if you take the moment to pause it, there's ongoing effects, and some fighters have better damage reduction, some are all-arounders. So for the Spirit of Dragon, it's good for damage reduction, but it's only a 4% reduction of damage. It's not really anything to get all that excited about. And the other fighters, what they specialize in, is basically about the same as well. Good lordy, 17 upgrades. That's crazy. So it would have been great if there were more weapons and just differences in the fighters themselves. Maybe a little more variety in what kind of enemies we're facing. Admittedly, that's part of why I chose to jump to this stage, as we can see a lot more of the game here, as stages 2, 3, and 4 basically deliver a lot of the same that you've already seen. And then we have how grindy the game gets. Having several fighters that you can potentially unlock, and each one, oh awesome, that's our first really lucky draw. So having multiple fighters that you can unlock, which are costly to unlock, and then having to upgrade each fighter individually is going to require a lot of playthroughs. And depending on how much you love the game, you might not be willing to invest that time into a title. And then along those lines, the price point is another thing to talk about. So by default, it's $30 US. I kind of feel it's just a little bit pricey for what they're asking, especially when you compare similar titles on the market. I think $20 would have been about the sweet spot. So maybe, unless you're a big fan of Raiden, this one might be worth waiting for a sale for. And then lastly, the PC version does have some issues with it. Namely, there's not really any graphical options available. You're basically locked to a 720p resolution. So if you're going to pick this up on the PC on Steam, that's something to keep in mind. But on the plus flavors are concerned, so I love all the unlocks and the achievements that the game itself has. So also, this whole upgrade system is one of the things that has really surprised me. Just the fun of building a different run each time. Although sometimes you'll just be kind of going for the same thing, it is nice if you have some options to build things slightly different. Like at this point, we could pivot to a laser if we wanted to for our main weapon. But the whole set of the unlocks, the achievements, unlocking you different weapons as well as different weapons and passives, all of that I think adds for a really great package. So this comes across as a really fun, exciting roguelite that if you like these roguelite twin stick shoot 'em ups, then I think Raiden Nova is one to give a try, especially if you can get it at a sale or you're a fan of the franchise. So overall, there you have it. Raiden Nova served up for your enjoyment. So as far as the way that I would recommend this, I would recommend this title, especially if you're a fan of the roguelites. But one thing you have to keep in mind is so there you have it. Raiden Nova served up for your enjoyment. So overall, this is a title that I would recommend, but definitely with the caveats that it's going to be a very grindy experience and the price point might not be worth it for everybody. It would probably be better to wait for a sale on this one. Alright, that'll just about bring us to the end of this week's episode of Shoot 'em Up Saturday. As always, we want to thank you so much for joining us this week. We hope you have a wonderful week yourself, and we look forward to seeing you again next time.